Dr. Rahat, how does the political spectrum in Israel compare to the United States?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, probably the spectrum is not so different, but you have to remember that while you have two parties that are big tents for extreme right plus moderate right and extreme left plus moderate left, we have many parties. It really depends in which day you count, but
Which day you count? Okay.
yeah, I mean, in the current Knesset, we have about 15 to 20 parties. It
Oh,
really
wow.
depends on the way that you count political parties. And some of the parties are extreme right, and some are seen as extreme left, even though they are not all of them are exactly left, because the Israeli left-right continuum is defined in a different way. It is defined mainly on the basis of policies that have to do with security and foreign affairs. I mean, until lately, it was this way. The people who supported the idea of Greater Israel, of annexing the occupied territories, what we call hawks, were the right wing, and the left wing were people who were more tending to support a compromise, land for peace.
Did you call
However,
them the doves?
the doves, yeah.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
the last decade, I would say that things has changed because the chances for peace with the Palestinians has become really low.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the last more than 15 years, the Palestinians are divided between the Hamas rule in Gaza and the PLO rule in the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there were, even if a peacenik would come and would like to sign an agreement, he would have to find a partner in the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they are divided. So the Palestinian issue is becoming less important, at least in immediate terms, but the same, more or less the same dividing line is continues now, and it have to do more with things that have to do with religion and state, with culture. In a way, it becomes actually more, maybe a little more similar to the United States. In some ways, it's a type of cultural war between the more progressive, the less religious forces, and the more religious forces, and I would call them populist forces rather than conservative forces, because conservatism, in my opinion, is a different thing. But we have a very strong populist trend in Israel, like you have in the United States.
Yeah. Definition of conservatism in the United States itself has changed, and I think populism has sort of supplanted it, superseded it in the right side of our political spectrum.
Yeah, but it doesn't make it's not make justice to conservatism, which is about respect for the past and the future.
Yes.
And a lot of and being very moderate when it comes to changes. So the use of the word conservatism these days is quite problematic, even when you look at the meaning of the word. Yeah.
In Israeli politics, I'm going to go through several different issues that we have here in America. I just wanted to see if there's similarities in Israel. Is abortion an issue, for example?
Well, the Jewish religion is not as strict as the Christian religion when it comes to abortion.
Interesting.
It's not the case that religious people like abortions, or that they would encourage abortion. There is also some civil society groups, religious civil society groups, that would ask women not to conduct an abortion, but to give birth. But this is not a main issue.
It's not.
In Israeli politics, not at all.
How about LGBTQ rights? Is that an issue?
Well, there was a revolution, I would say, in the last decade or two in Israel.
Revolution, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's become quite legitimate to be LGBT, to live like this. From the point of view of many people, even the speaker of the current Israeli legislature, the Knesset, from the Likud, is is a homosexual who live with a man, and they have two adopted kids or something, or they have two kids. So it is legitimate. On the other hand, you cannot get married as a gay in Israel because we have only religious marriage, and no religion would let two gay people get married. You can have a civil status of like being married, which was given by the Supreme Court of Israel, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But you cannot get married. I would say that things has really changed, but the struggle is not over. Some forces, especially religious forces, do not like this development, and they try to push back, and they try to delegitimize these issues. And you can see these days in the protest, you can see a lot of LGBT
flags, actually. Yeah. I've seen them on TV. How about, and this is my last question on this, I was just trying to get a feel for current Israeli politics. How about race, skin color, or geographic origin? The reason I ask that because a lot of different immigrants, people of Jewish background, come to Israel. You know, I don't know, a Jewish person that comes from Denmark and starts living in Israel is different than one that comes from Ethiopia, right? So, are there any race issues or anything like that?
Well, it's the race issues in Israel are different in the sense that the dividing line is not according to your color.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are people still, visible minorities are always are more prone to racism. But the most important dividing line in Israel is between Jews and non-Jews. And when you see racism, for example, against people of color, you will see it at most times against people who are not Jews. We have Jews that have Ethiopian Jews, for example, and they also claim to suffer from racism, but I think that they suffer, let's put it this way, less racism than some people who came to Israel from Africa and are not Jews, but came here running away, refugees from
persecution and other.
So I wouldn't deny that there is racism in Israel, something that you know from the United States. But as I said, the most important dividing lines is between Jews and non-Jews.
Got it. Let's get into personalization of politics. Back in 2018, you wrote a book titled From Party Politics to Personalized Politics, Party Change and Political Personalization in Democracies. I just want to repeat that. You wrote this and it published in 2018. Why did you write this book? Let's start with that.
Sorry?
Why did you write this book? Let's start with that. What was that? What was the inspiration for writing this book, Personalization of Politics?
Actually, my obsession with personal politics started in 2004 when I was still quite young. And I saw that I was a scholar of political parties, but I saw that individuals are becoming more and more important, and parties are becoming weaker vis-a-vis their leaders, vis-a-vis their politicians. So I started in 2004. In 2007, I published a paper that was written together with my colleague from political communication, was published, and it became quite successful in a sense that most of the people who study political personalization would refer or adopt our definition. And since then, I studied many different things, but I also continued to be interested by it. And then, well, when I studied political parties, and I felt that it becomes not like studying political parties, but like studying gossip in Hollywood, something like this. Less and less about institutions, about these things, and more about specific people. So with this feeling, I wanted to see whether my feeling from Israel is also relevant and valid for other countries. So Ofer Koenig and myself, we looked at 26 countries. We looked at more than 10 indicators for political personalization, for a change from party politics to personal politics. And we find out that in most countries, you can identify personalization, but the two leaders in terms of political personalization were Israel and Italy. And
Israel and I would have thought you were going to say Israel and United States. Interesting. Israel and Italy.
no,
Okay.
United States is personal by definition, because you have your presidents and the governors, etc. But you are absolutely right. In the 90s, Marty Wattenberg, an important professor from UC Irvine, wrote a book about the personalization of American politics. And he identified that even your politics that was personalized from the beginning have become more and more personal up to the 90s. I would say that if somebody will check it these days, you will probably find that it is once again quite personalized, at least when you look at the power balance and sometimes the power struggle between the Republican Party and Donald Trump. So you can see, you're absolutely right that personalization in probably United States is also a champion of the personalization of politics. But the government system, the presidential government system, is much about personalism. And what we really examined were countries that were either parliamentary systems in which people select political parties that gather in parliament and build a government. They do not select directly the chief of the executive. Or we also checked France and other countries which are type of mixed semi-presidential systems.
So has Israel, this is sort of, I guess, rhetorical question. I can anticipate your answer. Has Israel become more personalized in its politics in the last 5-6 years?
Well, Israel has become more personalized in the last 3 decades. In the last 5 years, it become even more personalized. I actually wrote a special paper just for a book on the last. We had 5 elections in a row. The book was about the previous 4 elections that were conducted in 2019, 2021. So I wrote a piece and I checked whether Israeli politics has become even more personalized. And unfortunately, the result was yes, it became even more personalized in many senses, in a way that politicians behave, in a way that politics is covered by the media, in the ways that people think about politics, in the way that people vote. More and more people are saying that they vote to political parties because of their leaders. More and more people said that the elections were all about Benjamin Netanyahu, whether he should continue to rule or not. And just remember, we are not electing a president. We are electing a political party. When you come to the ballot box, you can see that the ballot papers are just of political parties. It's not, you do not select any person in person. You just select a political party.
Wait,
So
I'm sorry. I want to make sure I understand that. You don't have the names of the members of the Knesset on the ballot?
no, you have just the name of the political party. In the
Oh,
last,
wow. That's like me going and just checking Democratic or Republican on a ballot. No names?
no names. Now, in the last 3 decades, the parties add some of the time the parties add their leader name to the name of the party. But nevertheless, the votes in Israel are counted only for the political parties. The people who are going to be elected, they are decided by the parties themselves. Before the elections, the parties submit a ranked list of candidates. And let's imagine that the party wins 30 seats in parliament. So the first 30 people in the list will get into parliament. That's it. When you vote, you do not have an idea who these people are unless you're really a dedicated democratic citizens and you go to the lists that are there somewhere and tell you who the people are within the list. Yeah.
I have so many questions to ask after you mentioned this, but I'm not going to because I don't want to monopolize 6-7 hours of your time. But let me just ask this one question. So let's say I live in Haifa, I live in Tel Aviv, or I live in Jerusalem, or Hebron. How do you know who your representative will be? Like here, I vote for a senator in California, or I vote for a specific U.S. representative to the House. But if you're just voting for a party, how would you know who's going to represent you?
The party that you voted for is supposed to represent you as a team, not as a specific, not a specific person in the party. You may argue that years ago, when the large parties were still large, you might find in the specific parties representatives that identify themselves as representatives of specific area or a specific group. But these days, the large part, you can hardly find what you call your representative. However, unlike the United States, the system is proportional, which means that your votes are not wasted. For example, if you live in California and near the sea, probably if you're a Republican, you are never really represented because the Democrats are having the upper
That's
hand.
right. Yeah,
if you
yeah.
go to Sierra Nevada and you're still a Democrat, you're in troubles because there the Republicans are elected. Yeah. In Israel, wherever you live, you will get your representation because the system is proportional. The share of seats and votes is quite similar. So our system have the problem of not being able to identify your representative. On the other hand, it's highly representative in terms of share of seats and votes. Of course, there is a way to create an electoral system that would be something in between the United States and Israel, in which you will have representation in any case, but you will also be able to identify your representative. It is possible, but this is a reform that we, I work at the Israel Democracy Institute. We have electoral reforms in mind, and we propose them to the politicians for the last 30 years, but they are not really happy to think about it because politicians who are elected by and through a specific system are not really happy to change it. Someone once said that you cannot expect politicians to change the electoral system because they are like come on, what's the name of the bird that you eat in Thanksgiving?
Oh, Turkey?
Yeah, so asking politicians to change the electoral system is like asking turkeys to vote for Thanksgiving. That's what they say. Yeah.
I love it. All right. I just want to sum up. So in Israel, while you may not know who your representative exactly is, your vote is counted and is represented based on the apt examples that you were given in California, whether you live in Sierra Nevada or coastal California.
Clearly.
We'll be back after a short break to talk about Israel's military and religion.